Start spreading the new.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New York, I love you. I love New York.
Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over! The Bulls win at the buzzer! Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. LeBron James with the rejection. Puts up the three. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. And we got a lot to talk about. Second round of the playoffs have begun, and the New York Knicks took on the 76ers, and it was a bloodbath at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks absolutely bludgeoned the 76ers 137-98 in a absolute dominant performance by the New York Knickerbockers, who just kind of from the jump just dominated this game. And you can really tell that the Sixers were really, obviously they came off a comeback from down 3-1 against, a team in Boston that many thought was going to be representing, the East in the finals, especially with Tatum coming back. But obviously, you find out that Tatum's not playing in Game 7, so that changes a lot. And, they did their thing, and, you got to give them credit. They came back from down 3-1. They never beat Boston, and they finally were able to take down, and get that monkey off their back. But they knew, the way the Knicks were playing, especially, being down 2-1, wasn't what many wasn't what me or many Knicks fans thought would be the, what would happen. I thought maybe the series would be done in 5, but, it was a little tougher in the beginning for the Knicks, and they took care of business, but they absolutely routed the Hawks in the final 3 games, especially capping off with a 50-plus point win in game 6. And then, they continued that momentum in this game, and they took advantage of the Sixers just being gassed. Sixers just looked like they just didn't have that gear, especially after a few minutes. Early on, you used to get in the feel of the game, but it felt like after the first few minutes, that the Sixers just did not have the legs to withstand what the Knicks were applying offensively. And then the Knicks just had more, and that's with Cat having foul trouble. And, if Cat doesn't have foul trouble, they probably kill them more on the boards, Embiid was just didn't have it. He was, I think he was like, he didn't even make like 3 shots, only a couple of rebounds. So he was essentially a non-factor. Maxey didn't have his legs. PG didn't have it. None of them had it. So the Knicks took advantage. They could not stop Jaylen Brown. And it's crazy. There's been a lot of talk about, I saw people post, Maxey's the best guard in this series. And I just have to push back and be like, I don't know, man. Brunson's been pretty good, and he proved it in this one. He was just absolutely dominant. He was dominant. He just it didn't matter what the Sixers were able to do defensively. It was just, you couldn't do it. You couldn't stop him. He was just, whatever you did, he just beat up the defense. It didn't matter who was guarding him. It was VJ, it was Kelly, it was Maxey. Didn't matter. Switches. It didn't matter what you needed to do. Brunson capitalized, drop coverage, whatever you did. You tried a hard head, nothing. JB was just on his thing, and just matriculated to everyone else. He had 35 efficient. People talk about his efficiency and how many shots he takes. He was 12 of 18, as efficient as you can be. didn't take too many shots. We know, like, kind of when he takes 20, 25 shots, the Knicks record, blah, blah, blah. But he was efficient, and they just bullied him defensively. They just got in Philly, and you could just tell after especially the first half, end of the first half, you just knew this Philly has no shot, and they kind of, gave up, and it was a wrap. And the Knicks took care of business and were able to dominate, take care of business in the second half. No signs of life sometimes the Knicks tend to let the foot off the gas. They've been full throttle since they were down 2-1 versus Atlanta, and they took care of business. So, you gotta love that effort. OG was terrific. He's been really good. Defensively, offensively efficient. Just missed one shot. This is the matter of thing. This Knicks shot 63% from the field, 51% from three. They just were on it, and they just did not let the foot off the pedal, and they just absolutely were just. It was perfect. It was, as much as it might have been game 6 versus the Hawks was as perfect as possible. This might be just as good as that, as a performance. They were just on it, and just you don't want to give this Sixers team hope. And I think game 2 they got to come up with the same. It's the same way you gave Atlanta hope when you gave up game 2, when you blew the double-digit lead. Don't do that with the Sixers. You just don't give them life. We got to take care of business in game 2 and go up 2-0, hell into Philly, and take care of business. We have an opportunity here to get back to the conference finals. We got to take advantage of it. A lot of people I know picked the Sixers, obviously coming off beating the Boston Celtics, and and I thought this was a fairly even matchup. I'll keep it 100%. I thought this was a fairly even matchup. Especially the way the Sixers are coming off. VJ Edgecombe adds another element to that Sixers team. PG, who after this 25-game suspension for PEDs, you thought he's been playing really well. Played good against the Celtics. Kind of looked like himself at times. And you thought, okay, this is a fairly even matchup. Embiid was kind of looking like Embiid, but maybe it's just a game 1 thing. But I think this matchup with the Knicks, I don't know. I don't know if the Sixers, like I said, people have been taking the Sixers, and I don't know. I think the Knicks are in really good shape. Now, I said that in the Hawks series. I thought that series wouldn't go past, 6 games, and it did. So, maybe that was just a case of the Sixers, only had 1 day off after that game 7, and the Knicks had a couple more days off than them. And they just didn't have it. And as usually happened, and that's expected. I didn't expect that this much of a butt whooping, almost. But I expected to win this game handily. Whatever the spread was, I think it was 7.5. I was comfortable with that. So you take that. But it is what it was, and they took care of business, and that's really all that matters. The Knicks have been playing really good. 4 straight wins. Double digits, just ass whoopings, the straight ass whoopings. So great performance. Mikal, this is a good game for Mikal. 7 to 10, efficient. Saw the ball go in the basket. Hopefully, this is a sign that he can come on, because if he, I know people get on him with the draft pick, and we could talk about that endlessly, but sometimes you just need to see the ball go in the hoop, and if that's the case with him, we need him. He's very important for us. He's very important for us, especially with the matchup with Maxey, who can just is a blur with the ball, maybe the fastest player with the ball in his hand in the NBA. He's still capable of going off. So we got to hope he can get there and do his thing. But overall, just it's not really much to talk about. They dominated. As simple as that. They dominated this game from the jump, and you just love that. You love to see that, and they continuing their dominance in these playoffs in these last 4 games since being down 2-1 to Atlanta. They've really took care of business, and you hope they continue to that, and you hope that they bring it in game 2. Wednesday. Just balance the performance. I think everyone got a bucket in this game. Every single player, except Sohan. Of course, Jeremy Sohan didn't play, but everybody else got a bucket. Even my guy Tyler Kolek, who I still hope can get real minutes. I don't think it's going to happen, but he even had 8 points. You just see it, just the balance, and it's just a very dominant performance, and just gotta see what the Sixers are going to do defensively, because they have the thing is they have the guys to contain Jalen Brunson, whether it's Kelly Oubre, whether it's VJ Edgecombe, but Jalen Brunson is going to take care of VJ because VJ is only 19 years old, 20 years old. Baby's been here for a little bit, and he's going to take advantage of that matchup, night and day. Even though VJ has the ability to be a good defender and has the wingspan and everything. But the Knicks just offensively just crisp, rebounded the ball well. Probably would have dominated the boards more if Carl, wasn't in foul trouble. But they didn't really need Carl. He was deficient too. 7-11. And he did his thing. And they made half their 3-pointers. It just was one of those games where they were just. There's nothing the Sixers could have done. Nothing the Sixers could have done. They just did not have it, and the Knicks dominated. So tremendous performance on that end by the New York Knicks, and they're up in this series 1-0 and looking for a 2-0 lead, back at the Garden Wednesday. So we'll see what happens. See if the Sixers wake up. Hopefully they don't, but I expect the Sixers to bounce back on something. I don't know if they'll win. I'm not going to go that far, but they should bounce back. Like I said, that first game, that's a tough game after a grueling 7-game series versus a Boston team. Of all teams, that's a physical series, but they took care of business. But it's a different matchup with this Knicks team. The Knicks team is clicking offensively, defensively. They are just on a very different level right now. OG is playing tremendous defense. Josh Hart's playing solid defense. Even Cats look all right. So it's a good performance by the Knicks. Very proud, and let's hopefully they can finish it off. With the 2-0 going to Philly Wednesday night. But the other series, nothing. Just talk about the New York Knicks. I could talk about them all day, but the Spurs and the Timberwolves. I thought a lot of people said sweep. I saw a lot of people sweep. No Antman potentially, and then Superman said, "Nope, I'm playing," and I was like, "Whoa, he's playing," and it has been. It changed a lot because if he's playing, means he's relatively healthy, and okay, what is this? Okay, does this change everything? Maybe, you still feel good about the Spurs. But okay, let's see how he looks. And look solid, and the Spurs offense just, Wemby only had 11. I know it's all every alert I got from the Spurs. Wemby got a block. Wemby, he's gonna break Hakeem's block record, playoff block record in the first half. It's Wemby got a block. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but he only had 11 points. He only had 11 points, and they struggled in the first. Offensively, it was an ugly first half. It was an ugly first half. It was both teams scored less than 45 points in the first half, so it wasn't a pretty first half. And 11 point. Wemby just had 11 points, and we got to give credit to Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert first round had to deal with Nikola Jokic, and now he has to deal with Victor Wembanyama. But if there's anyone that knows Victor Wembanyama better than anyone, it's Rudy Gobert. He's worked out with him, played with him on Olympic teams, will qualify all these international games. He knows Wemby better than probably any player, in the NBA. And he did a good job. He did a great job. And he's been, I know Rudy gets a lot of crap. And I've given Rudy some crap too, especially with, early on in his Wolves career. But man, he's been good. He's been really good. He really is a special type of defensive player. And he's a big reason why. I mean, along with Jaden McDaniels, and then obviously, Terrence Shannon was good in this game, got the start, with Anthony Edwards come off the bench. He was really good. It was just like, okay, like he's good. Really, he's gonna go down as one of the greatest defensive bigs of all time. And whether we want to acknowledge that is one thing, but it's just true. He's one of the best bigs, defensive bigs we're gonna see of all time. He's there with Dwight Howard and Hakeem and all the great bigs that we've seen. Bill Russell. It's crazy to say. I know it's wild to say, but he's up there. He's up there as one of the best, one of the best bigs we've ever seen. And he's done it in first 2 rounds to go against, a 2-time, a 3-time MVP in Jokic and do your thing. And then now going with maybe the MVP of the league, defensive player of the year, and then Wemby. Rudy might have a couple more defensive player of the years if it wasn't for Wemby, taking these last 2. Especially this year, Gobert was really good. Gobert's going to be he's going to be on that first team all defense, but those last 2 minutes were very, obviously I think the Spurs were down 7 points, come back, a lot of Julius Randle. And the one thing that worries about me with the Wolves is the point guard play, man. The point guard play, because a lot of times you saw Julius Randle bringing the ball up or to Jaden McDaniels. And I understand the logic because, all right, we don't have a point guard. I know Mike Conley is technically point guard, but they're running off of, and you didn't have Anthony Edwards at full strength. So, you weren't able to have him as lead guard. So you do a lot of high ball, 2-man action with Julius Randle or just straight ISO with Julius Randle, just bullying whoever's guarding him, the smaller defender. So you just try to do that. But I wonder if that can really work in a 7-game series. That's going to be tough to do for a 7-game series for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But their defense is a major reason why they're in it and why they took care of business versus the Nuggets and why they're up 1-0 in this series. Fox was a 5-14 from the field. Wemby was 5 of 7. Wemby missed 12 shots. I mean, everybody wants to talk about, the blocks. This, he got this block, that block, blah, blah, blah. He missed 12 shots. That's cool. I mean, that's tremendous. He got 12 blocks. That's really cool. But he missed 12 shots. And he missed some bunnies, especially late in the fourth quarter, like where it could have went their way. And they could have, the momentum really, really could have shifted their way. It didn't. Because he's missing easy shots that he doesn't miss. And that part of his game is still in development. His offensive game. His defensive game is obviously what it is. He's one of the best. He might be one of the greatest defenders of all time right now, and he's only in year 3. But the offense is still a work in progress. Obviously, we know what he can do, and he's, he had a dunk where it felt like he dunked from the foul line with absolute ease. Let's go Knicks. Yeah, Hammertron, let's go Knicks, man. Good win. Dominant win. 4 straight dominant wins in the playoffs. Gotta love that. If you're watching me on TikTok, go to my YouTube channel, Off the Ball Podcast. I'm live right now on YouTube. I just hit 700 subscribers, so appreciate getting to 700. The road to 800 begins now. And if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm on TikTok live also. Talking the Knicks. I just talked about the Knicks and the 76ers. If you want to go back, check that out. I'm now talking about the Spurs and the Minnesota Timberwolves where it was a defensive slugfest. This is a old school defensive battle. And that's what you expect in the series. And that's how Minnesota's going to win. is matching the Spurs defensive intensity and just closing out games. You know, they have guys who can close out games. I say what you want about Julius Randle. He could close out games. He did it with us, you know. We'll bounce back tomorrow, Philly all day. Hey, man, listen. Y'all went through a hellacious 7-game series versus the Celtics. I didn't think it would be this much of a butt whooping, but I expect y'all to bounce back. Tomorrow should be I think a lot closer and a more competitive ball game. But you know, y'all had to use all your energy against Boston, so it's kind of expected that you might take a little bit of butt whooping. But that's okay. Hopefully, we get an interim series. But yeah. But they got a good look. Listen, they got a good look to even we could have forgot all about all that stuff. Wemby having a bad game, Champagne had a good look at the end. That was a good look, pump fake, had it. The three, he had a good look. You couldn't have asked for a better look. They didn't call. I think they had a timeout and they didn't call it because you could see the hesitation. I forgot I was bringing the ball up. I think was it Castle? I don't know. Castle or Vassell brought the ball up, and you could tell you hesitated to try to call a timeout, but they don't call a timeout. So they went. I think it went to Harper, and then kicked it off to Champagne, who pump. He goes, the defender goes, and Champagne had a good look, man. Champagne had a good look. Didn't read this Canadian. This Canadian, man. Never trust a Canadian. He peaked a few years ago as a podcaster. I think that's why he's jealous. Jealousy is a sickening disease. This guy named Ken Betts, sports, sickening disease. But he got a good look and didn't go in. At a peak. I mean, you had JJ Redick, and then, just like the New Day, you just fall off a cliff. I don't know what happened. Like you were there, and then you do date it, and then that's it, man. It sucks. It sucks being Canadian. But yeah, they got to continue the defense intensity, and I'm just surprised that I mean they made it seem like Antman was done. And for the series, and obviously, we're like, oh, the Spurs have an easy route, man. They had Portland in the first round, and they get a beat up Minnesota team, but Minnesota's like, no, we went to back-to-back conference finals. No, we can still do this. And with Antman being limited still, they took care of business and they won the game. You stole home court advantage. And so you got to give them credit. You steal home court advantage and you give yourself a chance. And that's what they did. And now the pressure is on the Spurs. That's why game one is very important, man, because that puts their pressure. If you're on a road team and you could steal game one, that gives you hella momentum. And if you could possibly sneak two at home, man, then you're in a beautiful spot. But Minnesota has to keep up the defensive intensity. I mean, it wasn't a good, they didn't shoot the ball great from three, but it was just making timely stops. And Victor Wembanyama didn't go crazy. He missed 12 shots. So they did their thing. The Knicks got as far as they will be able to go. I don't know, man. This could be it. This could be the year. Man. My prediction before the season was the Knicks versus the Wolves in the finals. That was my prediction. At points of the season, I was like, "Whoa, I don't know if this is gonna happen." And then the playoffs started. I was like, this Wolves were the 6th seed, right? I'm like, I don't know. And listen, the Wolves still got. I think the Wolves are have a tougher path to get to at least the conference finals than the Knicks do. I think the Knicks are in a lot better shape to get to the conference finals than Minnesota is, but Minnesota's just 3 wins away. And, you know, they look good. They look good, you know. And I want to give flowers to Chris Finch, man. Chris Finch is a hell of a coach, man. He's a really good coach. Today, what up, to appreciate the follow on TikTok today. Make sure if you want to hop on the YouTube on the YouTube live, I'm on YouTube at Off the Ball Podcast. Check it out. If you'll see my little cartoon face with Off the Ball Podcast. That's me, because there's a soccer one that just says Off the Ball. I'm Off the Ball Podcast. You see me with a little bat with a microphone, basketball behind me, cartoonish. Give me a sub. Like I said, trying to get to 800. Just got the 700 yesterday. Road to 800 begins. You know, love talking basketball. NBA draft. I have previous interviews of former NBA players, scouts, former NBA agents, everyone. But a lot of good stuff in the archive. So check that out. But yeah. So we'll see. And tonight we have game 1 with the Cavs. Detroit. Both teams should be thanking the basketball gods for putting them in position, because both teams easily shouldn't be here. They probably shouldn't be here. But you know, they especially Detroit. Detroit was down 3-1 for the second time versus remember, I think it was 2003 was the last time they were down 3-1 to Orlando, and they blew it. So Orlando, 3 straight first round series, and obviously Jamahl Mosley lost his job. So now who will be the next head coach for the Orlando? And I'll speak about that in a little bit. Will you be watching the game? Yeah, of course I'm watching the game. I'm off Wednesdays. I work. I'm off Tuesday, Wednesday. So Wednesday I will be able to watch the game. So I will be watching, and then I think the next game's Friday or Saturday. I'm gonna try to get to a watch party, and man, I might even try to go to Philly. Tickets are probably cheaper to go to Philly, so maybe it's not too far away. 2.5 hour drive, 3 hour drive. So we'll see how my pockets are filling. But the Cavs, obviously, talk about the Pistons first. Coming back, that obviously we're gonna go back to that game. Was it game 6? Game 6, where Orlando had that in the bag, up 24, and they scored 12 points in the second half, and only one made basket in the fourth quarter. And we're gonna remember that. If Detroit gets to the finals and goes on a probable run, we're gonna go back to that game 6 in the first round versus the 8 seed and be like, that was the turning point for the Detroit Pistons. Even though they were the number 1 seed, they won 60 games. Gonna have Cade be all first team NBA, and Duran's gonna be an all NBA type of player, most likely. That they're gonna go back to that game 6 and be like, that was the difference, because that's the difference between being one of the handful of teams that lost in the first round as the number 1 seed, and the difference between that catapulted us to get to the finals. It really is insane how much that game changed the whole series, because they dominated game 7 and took care of business. But it was crazy. That's still crazy. Still can't believe it happened. Still can't believe that happened. But this series is going to come down to, I think, Detroit's physicality. Detroit is the more physical team, and they look like the more physical team, especially the last few games. They didn't look physical early on versus Orlando. Like, Orlando was matching the physical. Orlando looked like the number 1 seed, and Detroit looked like the 8 seed. Cade was shooting a lot, and and he probably should have had more triple double and stuff, but guys were hitting shots and guys couldn't create shots. But then Tobias Harris looked like a superstar those last few games, and I've gone on Tobias a little bit. Hugh Mario, either Knicks in 6 or sweep. I don't know. I hate predicting sweeps. I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I'll go Knicks in 6. That was my original prediction. I'll go Knicks in 6. A sweep is a little too much for me to say. I mean, I thought the Knicks could have swept the Hawks, especially after game 1. You would have thought, yeah. And listen, the Knicks were up by 12, 13 points in game 2. It was at that point, I'm like, oh yeah, we're definitely sweeping these boys. But basketball is a game of runs, and you just never know. Appreciate the follow, Richard. Yeah, but after yesterday, they could not compete with. Yeah, but they came off a 7-game series, a tough 7-game series. Like I said, I don't want to just go crazy because they won. They dominated, but I think this should be a series. This should be a series. I think game 2 should be more competitive. I think the Sixers will be a little bit more fair. I think they just took the gas off the pedal and just said, "Hey, man, we're gonna let this one go. We're tired. We're beat up right now. We need as much rest as possible." And they let they let the gas off the pedal in the second half, especially. In the first half, it was 23-point lead, I think. So, I think they'll be more prepared next game. Rich. Call you Rich, bro. Appreciate the follow, though. Make sure to follow me on YouTube also, Off the Ball Podcast. I think the link is in my bio, so check that out. Give me a follow. I'm trying to get to 800 subs. Trying to get to 800. But yeah, back to Detroit. The Cavs, I mean, you go on the Cavs side, and Donovan Mitchell has been kind of up and down, and James Harden too. James Harden is starting to look like his age. Jared Allen was kind of up and down, but he had a monster at game 7. He dominated on the board. I think didn't he have like a double-double in like the first quarter or something like that? Like, it was insane. Like, Mobley is going to be the key. Mobley needs to play like his contract. He needs to play like the player we think he could be. I think there's a lot more to his game than we've seen. He needs to take over. Detroit needs to make sure that Sam Merrill and Max Strus don't go off. They got to contain those boys. They need more from Dennis Jenkins on Detroit side. He needs to step up a little bit more. They need Tobias Harris to listen. Tobias Harris isn't going to be like that in a whole 7-game series. But if you can get 3 to 4 games of Tobias Harris, game 7 Tobias Harris, or game 6 Tobias Harris, you have a good chance because Detroit doesn't have anyone that can take over. Assard is going to do what he does defensively. He's going to do what he does as a slasher. Obviously, he's not going to give you much off, on the perimeter, but he could do that stuff. You need Duncan Robinson to hit shots. Jalen Duren to be that other guy too, to dom, because at times Wendell Carter looked like, the all-star, all-NBA player than Jalen Duren. He can't do that versus Jared Allen. Now, Jared Allen is someone who was a all-star, type of player. So that's going to be an interesting matchup to see those two. Big man Stewart, big bully. See how he's going to be a huge factor in this series. So that's just an interesting matchup. I don't even know where to go. I'm going to go Detroit, and I think this goes 7. I think it goes 7. I think you're just going to get a back and forth series. Both teams played in game 7s, so they're both. Let's see. Let me take a question from the TikTok. Nelson Vasquez, appreciate the follow, my guy. You think the Knicks repeat a blowout? Knicks over 200 again. Oh, the total 200. I don't know if it's not going to be a blowout like it was in game 1. I think this is going to be a closer game. Over 200 points total. Yeah, I think it should be. It should be close. I think it'll be a lot closer to the 200 line, but because I think this is gonna be a closer game. Because I think the Sixers are gonna be a little bit more fresh, a little bit more to go. But I think this is gonna. Yeah, I think they'll hit the over 200 for sure. Even if if it's the Knicks win by 10, I think you're in good shape with that. But yeah, I'm gonna take Detroit in 7. I think there's a lot of momentum. Appreciate you, man. I think there's a lot of momentum on Detroit's side after coming back 3-1. Now you can look at the other side. Well, they took them all that to it took Orlando collapsing because that loss by Orlando in game 6, 24-point lead, was more in Orlando than it was on Detroit. Detroit took advantage, but Orlando put themselves in that position by not hitting shots in the second half. Because if they just hit, if they shoot bad, they win that game. They didn't even shoot bad. They shot below bad, 3 times below bad. As bad as bad. If they just were bad, they win that game. But, so you could look at it at both sides and be like, okay, Detroit has all the momentum, winning 3 straight to come back from 3-1. But then you can also be like, well, they were down 3-1 against a team in Orlando that got blown out in the first game to play in. Obviously they won the second, but struggled all season, up and down. They don't like their coach. Coach got fired after all this. And should we buy in? They're playing a team in Cleveland, but then we could look at also Cleveland. Well, they struggled against the Raptors team that they should have beaten 5. Who were down. No Emmanuel Cook quickly. Brandon Ingram was hurt for a lot of series. So how do you look at it? So this series is going to mess up a lot of people because it's very hard. D-Mitch won't go outside. I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know, Kev. I don't know. I don't think it's so much him. I think he's going to be – Donovan Mitchell's always going to be – even last year when they lost the second round, Donovan Mitchell was doing his thing. It was his teammates that failed him. His guy's not playing, in game 2 and then playing in game 3. We probably could have been in game 2. Jared Allen and I forgot homie, the wing they had and they traded. So I'm not worried about it. I think D-Mitch is going to do his thing. It's all predicated on James. What James do we get? James is year 18. He's always 37, 38. It's up to can Mobley do something? Can Jared Allen be more the Jared Allen in game 7 versus Toronto? Where he was where he looks like Jared Allen's one of the most frustrating players. Because this times Jared Allen looked like he's a top 5 big in the world. And then there's times where you're like, really, Jared? You getting cooked like that? That's the frustrating thing about this casting is they have a lot of players like that. We're still waiting for, Mobley to, but I think the key for the Cavs is I mentioned before for Detroit, they got to make sure that the other guys like Merrill and Strus and them boys don't go off. They got to hope they don't go off. So and if that's the case, then they'll have a chance in this series. But they'll be slightly more relaxed because I don't feel the Pistons defense is as good as Toronto's is. Detroit's defense is, I think the defense is good. I mean, Asar might be Asar might be the best on-ball defender in the NBA. He's there with his brother. I would have put Dyson Daniels. And even though I think Dyson Daniels, depending on the matchup, it could struggle. But Asar, he could guard, the elite wings, the elite guards in this game. But he's going to be tasked with probably guarding Mitch. So that's a matchup I'm interested to see. But I think the thing with Asar is, can he do something on offense? Can he be able to do anything on offense? But they're definitely going to be looking at what Toronto did defensively because Toronto has Scotty Barnes got a wingspan. Colin Murray-Boyles was his coming out party. He was kind of under the radar all year, and then he had a great playoffs. I mean, they got people thinking that people made mistakes in the draft with him. So I think they got to take, whatever you got to figure out what Toronto did to really mess with them. And I think it's physicality, and that's why I think Detroit has this because Toronto matched the physicality. We're just out physically, the Cavs. The reason why they lost because they just didn't have enough bodies. Okay, we know that they just didn't have enough guys. Scotty Barnes leveled up too. I think Scotty Barnes is. I know people, aren't as high as Scotty. I think Scotty Barnes is. He showed me a lot. And I think he gives me. I wasn't high on Toronto in their future. because I think they have a lot of good players, but they're one of those teams where I don't know if it gels. But Scotty Barnes leveled up for me. If they can figure out a few pieces, maybe with, I don't know how RJ and Ingram and all of them work together. Maybe they could try to find someone else that can be a better glue piece, but a piece here and there, and Toronto's in good shape. But like I said, Donovan Mitchell's made the playoffs every year too, man. People forget that. Like, he has a winning mentality, but he needs James to be, to not look old, and he needs his guys. He needs his bigs to play to play up to their potential. But I'm gonna go with Detroit in 7. We'll go 7. I want to see a 7-game series. And I think they ride off the momentum of Orlando, and they take care of business. The Lakers OKC series. The spread is like 14.5 in game 1. That's crazy. I understand Luka's not playing. So to me, that makes, if Luka was to, let's say Luka was playing, so then how many points do you think Luka's worth? If the spread's 14.5, and I'm just got to check, I'm gonna go check the injury report. Because I think AR is good to go, right? Because AR's came back in the middle of that Rocket series. They don't have Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams is not playing, right? Jalen Williams is out, and they're still a 14.5 point favorite. Yeah, so he's out. They're a 14.5 point favorite with no Jalen Williams. I know they dominate. I know they took care of business, but that was the Suns. That was the Phoenix Suns, who probably should have even been in the playoffs, but they overachieved, and you got to give them credit. They built that team to be a competitive team, especially after the few years they had with KD that just didn't go right. They bounced back, had a good season, made the playoffs. But did anyone think that the Suns had a chance? No. So you expected the sweep. Then they did what they think. I don't know. I can't be comfortable with 14.5 point spread versus LeBron James versus the King. Nah, I can't. That's too much. That's way too much. I can't do it. I know everyone's riding the sweep. Everyone people I talk to, they're like, yeah, I think the sweep. I don't know, man. I don't know about sweep. I don't think Luka's going to come back. I think the hammy is probably really bad. I think if the hammy wasn't as bad as we thought, he'd think you give it a shot. But we know hamstrings are weird. They can, and this would have been so much fun to see Luka versus Shea, but can LeBron carry? This might, all right. I'm not saying LeBron's had a lot of great feats in his 23 years playing, but this will go down as one of the best if he takes down OKC on his own. Him and AR take down at OKC. That'll be a highlight. And I don't know if LeBron James. I don't even think I remember LeBron James being this big of an underdog, even when the Warriors had their monster, their big three. And he was going against them in the finals. This is different territory. This is different territory. I'll let you in. Man. I'll give you a few minutes. I'm not going to be long. I know. If you're on YouTube, I'm talking to some people on TikTok. Yeah, I remember you, bro. I don't know if you can hear me. I can't hear you.
You were a Knicks fan, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Man, damn, y'all are like giving PTA to the opponents.
Yes, we are, man. Ever since that 2-1, being down 2-1, and they've just been on a different dimension, man. The defense has been on point. They've been efficient, grabbing, the board. They've been dominating the board. So hopefully they continue up. I mean, think about it. Game 2, when they lost game 2 Atlanta, they were up by 12 too. So, there's a lot of games in this series that they've dominated.
Well, low-key, don't get you I would say if you're a Knicks fan, don't get your hopes too high because like Philly is tough as well. Like the way Philly's been playing recently, like down 3-1 against the Celtics, like they can come back against the Knicks as well.
Oh no, of course.
Keep this in too late.
No. I don't expect this to be a sweep or we're going to dominate them by 30 like we did with the Hawks the last 3 games. I don't expect that, but I expected game 1 to be kind of not to that extent, not that big of a blowout, but I did think that it was going to be a game where the Knicks should win by double digits at minimum. Because Philly coming back, 7-game series, it's going to be tough.
I thought Philly would make it closer in game 1. I thought they would have the momentum and like maybe even win game 1. I never knew it was going to be this bad of a spanking.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the game off the jump, the way Embiid was moving, that's how you could dictate, what's going to happen with Philly. If you see Embiid moving good, then they got a shot. If you see him not wanting to move, there was possessions where guys are driving and he's not even trying to block it or he's not trying to do it. And I was like, okay, it's just a matter of time till the Knicks figure this out and they take advantage of this. And that's exactly what they did. And it was over after, midway through the second quarter. It was over. You could just tell, like, all right, they don't have the legs. They're not boxing out. They're not rebounding. They're not coming off screens well. They're being lazy and just doing, everything's drop coverage. And you can't do drop coverage versus Jalen Brunson because he's just going to eat it. He's just that good of a offensive player. You give him drop coverage and everyone's too tired to guard him on the perimeter, it's a wrap.
Did you watch the Timberwolves game yesterday? That was a really great game.
Yeah, I was at work yesterday, so I didn't get the I watched the games this morning, so I caught up this morning. But yeah, that was an interesting game. I mean, defensively, they did a really good job of making sure that Wemby was not going to be the factor. If Wemby was going to have 30 points along with 12 blocks and everything, they lose that game by double digits. But they were like, we're not going to let him beat us because he's the engine and we got to control the engine. And they did that. He only had 12 points. He missed, I think he was 5 of 18 or 5 of 17. So he missed 12, 13 shots. And he missed, especially late in the game, he missed a lot of easy shots that maybe would have swung the game in the Spurs way, and maybe they pull off that game, by a bucket or two. But if he's not going to be hitting shots and they have no one else capable of taking over, then this could be a lot tougher series than people thought. So the Timberwolves just they have great defensive intensity. That's why they beat the Nuggets and Rudy Gobert. Honestly, Rudy Gobert has been difference maker. He was a big reason why they beat Denver, and now he's doing. Who knows Victor Wembanyama better than Rudy Gobert?
Exactly.
Not many people know his game better than him. So Rudy's just done a massive. I know people get on, and I was just talking about this before I went on live on YouTube and TikTok, but I was like, he's been really good. And I know he gets clowned on a lot for, it's going back to the COVID stuff and everything. And just everybody seems to like the crap on Rudy. And I've done it too. I ain't going to front. But over the years, I've been gaining more respect for him because I feel like his defense is really that good. It's not just a product of just, he's just a big block. He's one of the best defensive bigs we've ever seen. I know that's crazy for people to think, but he's up there as one with Dwight Howard and stuff. Like he's that good of a defensive player, and he's showing it in these first 2. I know it's just game 1 and that could change, but there's no better player that could stop Victor Wembanyama than Rudy Gobert, and he did a good job with Jokic in round 1. And he's game 1. He's the big reason why they upset the Spurs in game 1, man.
But to be honest, gotta give credit to Anthony Edwards. He's a tough player. Like the fact that he got like an injury in game 4. Game 3 of last series and then came back like a week later. That's insane. Like,
yeah,
I would expect him to come back like game 4 of this series, Loki.
Yeah, I mean, some people said he was done for the series. Like they were like, yeah, he didn't tear anything, but the hyperextension he had was so bad that it was like, all right, he might be out for the series for sure. Like it's that bad where he's definitely out for this series. He can come back for a conference finals if they break, but nobody's thinking he's going to make it. Nobody's thinking he's going to play in the conference finals if he's not playing in the semis, So He's what you want as one of those faces of the league, man. Like he's tough, and he's super skilled, and he came off the bench and had 18, 19 points, and Terrence Shannon stepped up big as a starter, so they just a well balanced team, and it seems like in the playoffs they level up. Like last year, people they had up and down. See, obviously they made the big trade, with Towns and getting Randall, but the playoffs seems like Chris Finch, Anthony Edwards, everyone else levels up. McDaniels levels up. Gobert becomes, Dwight Howard. It just they level up for some reason. They're just one of those teams that come playoff time, that suits how their team plays better than the regular season. It's pretty impressive.
Even though he had a minutes restriction yesterday, he played very well. Like he had a couple like step back threes and whatnot. Like I was surprised that he played that well.
Yeah,
off an injury.
He's impressive, and it just shows you that he wants it, man. He wants it. I respect any player that wants it. I'm all for players, taking care of their body and making sure you're at 100%. But hey,
millions of dollars, that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
those people who rest up, or what's it called? I can't find the word.
Load management.
Load management, yeah. Quote unquote load management. Those people who do that, they're lame. Like y'all get paid millions of dollars. At least try to play more.
No, and it's as long as you're good enough to play. If it was something where he was just like, yeah, there's no chance you're gonna make it worse, you're gonna tear your ACL, blah blah blah. Like the calf injuries that lead to the Achilles. That's why I won't get on Jason Tatum for not playing in Game 7 because obviously he dealt with the Achilles.
Franz Wagner as well.
Franz Wagner, so I think more guys are more hurt than we think. I think it's more organizational things that they keep players out more than players keep this out. I think more players want to play through, but sometimes you do have to save the players from themselves.
More so a knee stiffness rather than what's it called? What you mentioned?
Oh, hyperextension.
Knee stiffness.
So maybe it was an overdiagnosis. Maybe they thought it was a lot worse, and it wasn't as because he didn't look. He looked all right. He looked solid. He looked good. Good enough to play, obviously, and he had 19 points, 18 points. So he was good enough to play, and they'll see how he does in Game 2 because the soreness. Let's see how his recovery is after once they get ready for Game 2. But they're in a good spot now, and if they continue the defensive intensity, control Wemby, make sure he doesn't take over, and guys step up, do their things. You need Terrence Shannon to have one of those type of games too. Then they're in good shape. And this won't be a 4 or 5 game series for the Spurs. This would be a 6-7 game series, most likely. So I think this is going to be a better series than we anticipated.
I think the Cavs series is going to be epic. Like it's going to be great. I think Cavs are going to win. I'm speaking biasly here.
Oh, of course.
Realistically as well, I think Cavs have more experience, so they're going to move on. And then Lakers Thunder, that's going to be interesting as well. I have the Thunder winning. And then I have in the Western Conference Finals rematch, Thunder and Wolves, I have Wolves winning it this time around. I think Wolves are going to be more experienced and they're going to learn from their lessons from last year. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to go to the finals and play the Cavs. This is my biased one. My unbiased is probably going to be Thunder Knicks, low-key. Actually, yeah, Thunder Knicks.
Thunder Knicks would be called. My pick was Knicks versus the Timberwolves. So that's what I'm rooting for. Obviously, I'm rooting for my team, just like you're rooting for your team to go to the finals.
Going back to Minnesota and then Julius Randle and them going back.
That'll be great TV. That they got a bunch of storylines in there. You got, Minnesota's never won a championship, and the Knicks haven't won one since 1973. So good storylines there on alone. Antman, can he? If Ant wins the championship, is he the new face of the NBA? There's a lot. If Jalen Brunson, wins the championship for the Knicks, there's a lot of good storylines there. So,
Are you going to any playoff games this year?
Nah, dog. It's expensive, man. Being in New York, it's.
How about the watch party that they have outside the arena? Have you attended any?
No. Last year I went to one. Just with work. It feels like every time the Knicks play, I'm at work. Tomorrow I won't be at work, but when they get to the conference finals, when it gets a little more rowdier, like when we get closer to maybe trying to get to a championship. That's where I'm going to go to the outside. But I've been to I'll go to some watch parties like in some clubs and stuff next round and stuff. But the big one, and plus it's hella crowded, dog. I'm getting old. I don't like being around too many people like that, So, but yeah, I like watching from the comfort of my home too. That's not a bad spot.
That's all I had for me. I'm gonna head out.
Yeah, bro. You take care. I'm headed out too, man. Appreciate you, man. All right. That's going to sign off on that note. And a lot of good playoff games today. We got to go. We got Knicks. Can the Knicks take care of business in game 2 tomorrow? Can the Lakers upset the OKC Thunder? Detroit, Cleveland. I forgot to talk about the coaches and Jamahl Mosley. I'll talk about that tomorrow. I'm going to come back on the show tomorrow and then talk more about it. But on that note, we will. Be safe. Take care. Let's go Knicks.
Start spreading the new.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New York, I love you. I love New York.